Good morning and welcome to Sunday School at Second Baptist Church. I'm glad you could join me this morning. Today we're going to finish up the section on Proverbs that we've been doing. And it's been interesting to read through and study a little bit more in depth in the Proverbs. Now, if you have the Sunday School book, and you've been, anticipating which scriptures we would be covering from week to week, then I wanted to go ahead and let you know that what the Sunday School book has for the rest of the quarter, and I'm not sure how many weeks that is, 2 or 3 weeks, is the Song of Solomon. And I looked it over and I came to the conclusion that I would rather do something different than that. And so I'm going off the reservation and I'm going to pick a different scripture for us to do for the conclusion of the quarter. Next quarter we'll be doing Jeremiah. It may be for the whole quarter, and so that should be interesting. He was an interesting guy. But for the next few weeks, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do. I had hoped that I would have the scripture reference picked out before today so that I could let you anticipate that and read it ahead of time. I apologize for that, but God just hasn't really led me in the direction that I want to go yet, and so I'm still thinking about it. So anyway, we'll be in for a surprise next time around, won't we? When I figure out what it is and we go with it. So just be prepared. That might be interesting. You can make a guess and see if it's what I come up with. But anyway, today we're going to finish up the book of Proverbs. And the last 2 chapters of Proverbs is what's sort of talked about in your book, chapters 30 and 31. And chapter 30 is attributed to someone called Agur, or Agur, but it should be Agur probably. And it says in our student book that it could have been a nickname for King Solomon. He could have been a cohort of Solomon or a person who studied under Solomon, or something like that. And so I don't think anybody knows for sure. There may be some people out there who think they know for sure, but I don't think anybody knows for sure who he was. And the same thing with chapter 31. That chapter 31 is attributed to King Lemuel, and they don't really know where he was a king or who he was, but they feel that these works of Lemuel and Agur are associated with Solomon in some way. And so either they were influenced by Solomon or whatever. But we're going to just take it at that and go with it. Now, the lesson today does not really cover chapter 30. I read chapter 30 and thought about it a little bit, and a lot of what's there it's kind of what not to do. And it's not bad, it's just different. And so we're going to go ahead and go with what the lesson has presented, and we're going to do chapter 31, and particularly this section, which is preached on pretty often, I would say, on Mother's Day. This is when you are most likely to hear this section of scripture preached on, is on Mother's Day, because it's talking about the excellent wife, or in your book it says, in that version of scripture, it says the wife of noble character. And so these verses will be very familiar to you, and as we go down through them, but I thought, it's worth a review and a little discussion about them. So that's what we're going to do. the first little section then is verses 10 to 12. So let's read those. This is chapter 31 of Proverbs, verses 10 to 12. An excellent wife who can find? For her worth is far above jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. So it starts off with a rhetorical question, I guess. How, who can really truly find a wife who is excellent? She's worth more than jewels, and so there are some things here for the wife and for the husband. For I think we can also make an application to those who are not married, who may apply this as women who are not married may apply this to themselves as a woman of noble character. We'll say it that way. And so I think it's very applicable, because we all, whether we are a wife or we're not a wife, we should strive to be, as Christians, women of noble character. And then there are some men out there who are not married and may or may not be looking for a wife, but there are some things here that would apply to all men in the way that they treat women, and we'll try to apply those as we go through. So, I think the person who is described, the woman of noble character, is an aspiration for all of us. And there are people that you meet that may tick off all the boxes, but then for someone like me, you don't have to look very far before you say, she's she's lacking on some of this stuff. So let's go through it and let's see, what shall we aspire to? I think we'll look at it that way, because the woman, the excellent wife, is worth far above jewels, it says. And it says that her husband will have no lack of gain. In other words, she's going to bring things to him. She brings things to the table in the relationship that they have together. Maybe it's material things, but also I'm going to go further than that and say that she contributes to the relationship, and that is so important for a relationship, that the man and wife can have input together and make their decisions and do things together. And it says, the heart of her husband trusts in her. And this is the first point that I would like to make about the relationship. If her husband, or if we'll just keep it with husband and wife, it's too hard to keep going back and forth, but if the husband does not trust in the wife, and this is with any relationship you have with other people, if you don't give them your trust and try, then why would they want to be trustworthy? So it's kind of a two-way street. If you may be married to a person, or you're associated with a person who constantly questions everything you do, doesn't trust you, feels like you're not competent to be able to do anything, well then, not only does that diminish you and hurt your confidence, but also it can easily make you feel like, well, why try? And so I feel like this is telling us that the relationship has to be one where the husband puts trust in the wife, and then she in return is trustworthy. And that is the good balance in the relationship. I guess I'll divert for just a minute, and I will say that I know that, we, as I was growing up, we came through the age of women's liberation and things like that. And so you may or may not have an idea of how I view that, but I really, over time, through my life, I have come to view the relationship of a man and wife as one where the man needs to be the head of the household. And it's not because my husband told me that that's the way it should be, but I've realized that it is an image that God projects to us with the church. And also I just feel like it works better that way. If the woman is trying to be the head of the household, then it's this trust thing again. If she's the head of the household, the man may feel put down and may feel like, why try? And so there has to be a balance there. And somebody, in any organization, and a family is sort of an organization, in any organization, there just ultimately has to be the last word sometimes. And I just feel like it works better if I respect my husband enough to let him be the head of the household. And so that's the way I do it. And so, for me, it's not a thing that where I'm put down. It's a thing where I'm lifted up because I've made that decision and I feel good about it. I feel like that's the way things should be. So think about, your own relationship with others and whether or not you are giving your trust to those that you need to give it to. And of course, if a person shows himself to not be trustworthy, that's a whole different thing. But you can create trustworthiness at times by giving trust, if that makes sense. Okay, let's go on now to the next section. Well, there's one other thing that the book brings out, and I thought this was good. It gives a sort of a pyramid of what are the priorities, what should be our priorities in the home. First of all, number 1 is Jesus. Number 2 is our marriage. And number 3 is our children. And I agree with those priorities. And if you get those in the wrong order, it causes a conflict in the home. If you put your marriage above Jesus and doing whatever you want to do to make your marriage fun and great above Jesus, then you've got that wrong. If you put your children above Jesus, you've got that wrong. You've elevated them to a level that you should not. And if you put your children above your marriage, you've done wrong. Because if your marriage must be strong in order for the children to be secure. And those things have to be kind of in that order. It makes it work. It works better that way. So that's mentioned in the book. I think that's a good way to look at it. Now let's go to verses 13 to 16, the next section. It's still talking about the excellent wife. She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. She is like merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is still night, and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. From her earnings, she plants a vineyard. So, of course, right here is where the wheels come off my buggy, because it says she rises while it is still night. And I'm I am not a morning person, so that I've already failed at being the excellent wife. You know, it looks like she gets up and she cooks breakfast every morning, is what it sounds like to me, and also cooks for her maidens or her household helpers that she had. And I just think that's awesome. But you're not going to probably find me doing that thing. But let's look at it in a different way. It says that she's busy working. She's doing things. She's getting wool and flax and making things out of it, and she brings food. She gathers the groceries that need to be gathered. A lot of us do that. And she brings it from afar, and she brings it with effort, and a lot of us do that. And she provides for her household. She also apparently is a real estate investor, because she considers a field and buys it. And from her earnings, she plants a vineyard. So I don't think any of us can tick all the boxes on being excellent, but she's making wise decisions. And I think we go back to the wisdom that comes into Proverbs. She's making wise decisions in all of these things, in the way of providing food, in the way of making things, buying things that are going to maybe pay off in the future. And she plants this vineyard, which is going to produce something in the future. So she's being wise. She's thinking through and planning and doing things that will benefit her family. And so that's something for all of us to aspire to, is to not just go day by day, every day like the next, but to think about, are we being wise with the things that we're doing, with the choices that we're making? Are we making decisions, purchases, and whatever that will, in the long run, benefit our family, that are going to make our home more stable? And that's important, especially in these days where there are so many things pulling at you from every direction that you could spend money on. And some of those are very frivolous but expensive. And so it is to be a level-headed woman and to think about those things. Do I really need this? Is this really important? Is this something that I should devote money to? Will it benefit my family in the long run? Will it make my marriage stronger if I do this thing? Those are important things. Okay, and then let's go to the next section. I'm going to run out of time chasing a lot of rabbits. It mentions in the book the idea that sometimes our society looks down on women who are stay-at-home moms, for example. And it tries to point out that a woman who is at home is also a very productive person. Being a stay-at-home mom is not easy, because you do have to contend with people in society who look down on you and feel like you're just not quite as smart because you did that. I'm saying that from personal experience, because I was a stay-at-home mom for a few years when our kids were little, when our two older kids were little. And it was very demeaning for me to do that and to be with them. But at the same time, I felt that me raising them with my values and my views on life was more important than me going out and having a job separately. And so I did it. But for each person, that's a decision that you have to make, because I think it's very important that you just don't neglect quality time with your children. And if your job becomes so big that the children have gone by the wayside, then you need to rethink that. But being at home and doing the things that you can to strengthen the family from home is also a worthy and noble thing to do, and very important. Okay, now the book skips on. There's a section here, if you read through it from 17 down to 23, where it just tells more things that the excellent wife does as far as helping the poor and clothing her family, etc. And so, it's just additional things. So let's go down then to verse 23 to 27. It says, her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies belts to the tradesmen. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. There's a lot there for us to aspire to. The first part of it there says her husband is known in the gates. In other words, that she she gives her husband respect. He is viewed as a respectable person. And part of that, I think, as a woman, if you do respect your husband and respect them in your conversations, then it causes others to view them in a more respectable way. And so in this verse, it is attributing the fact that her husband is known in the gates, or respected, to the woman of noble character. And so that's the way that I can look at it. Maybe also the things she's provided for him, she's taking care to be sure that he has the things he needs, so that he is viewed as respectable. She's also, working and selling things, making things and selling them here. So again, she's doing something to strengthen the family. And it says strength and dignity are her clothing. So in other words, she wears strength and dignity as a garment. It is a part of who she is. It's a part of her character, a character of strength and a character of dignity. And she smiles at the future. In other words, she has done well for her family so that the future looks bright. She doesn't sit around and worry about the future, because she's done those things to help her family and to know that the future looks bright. The teaching of kindness is on her tongue. So the things that she instructs others with are done in kindness and love. And that's very important. Men and women are different. And in the family, a wife or a mother has to also be strong. I really don't think it's fair for a woman to put all of the discipline, for example, for the children over onto the husband. I never felt that way. I've always disagreed with that. And I was a pretty, strong mother. My kids might say I was stronger than I should have been. I don't know. But I was never one to put all that responsibility for discipline over onto my husband, because that causes another problem, that the children may only view him as being a disciplinarian. And that's not really the right balance, is it? And so it says here, she's a person of strength. She's a person of dignity. She acts in a dignified way. She's not going to act in a way that's embarrassing to the family. And she's going to be kind then. She's going to balance her husband in that way, because men are just gruffer sometimes than women. And she balances that out with kindness. And it says she does not eat the bread of idleness. That's probably a big lesson for me and some of the rest of us, where I end up eating the bread of idleness on a regular basis. I could do a lot more than I do. And then we get to the final part. Verses 28 to 31. So let's read that. Her children rise up and bless her, her husband also, and he praises her, saying, many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the product of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. So this ending part says, as she has lived as a person of noble character, these are the results then, that her children rise up and bless her. They respect her. They say kind things about her. Her husband praises her. And that's, again, important for all men, not just husbands, but men who interact with women, that they treat them in a way that praises them when they need to be praised, and lifts them up when they need to be lifted up. And that's very important. And then it says, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. And that's true. That's a true statement. That beauty is, we try to be beautiful. I mean, nobody wants to be considered, she's an ugly woman. I mean, nobody wants that to be said about them. We try our best. But those things that we do to beautify ourselves are really a vanity. And the most important thing is a woman who fears the Lord, regardless of her looks. A woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And that's so important, to fear the Lord, to be in awe of the Lord, to respect the Lord. Because if you respect the Lord, you're going to try to do God's will in your life. And if you are doing that, then you're going to do a lot of these things that we've just looked at, that the woman of noble character has done. And then at the end there it says, give her the product or the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gate. And so it's again saying, she should be praised for the good things that she has done to bring good to her family. And, why did these things have to be said about a woman of noble character? It's important for us as women to aspire, like I said at the beginning, to these things. But then, of course, these things were written in a time when it was a very male-dominated society. They didn't have to say a man of noble character needs to do these things. Most people understood whether a man had noble character or not, and men were revered whether they had noble character or not most of the time. You know, they were the dominant head of the family, and all of those things. And you know, the world has changed in a way, but it's still important even in our day, and we see some of those things, some of those topics, you know, mentioned, that how women, you know, don't get paid as much as men. You know, you see all of those things on TV. But even back then, in the day of Solomon, then it was important for these words to be spoken, and for this to be a part of the wisdom, to say that women should have their rightful place in society and be praised for the hard work that they do. I think that's important for all of us to remember. So we'll stop there, and next week we'll begin on a new topic. I am leaning towards the Ecclesiastes because it comes right after Proverbs, but I'm not stuck on that. So I'm just going to have to pray about that a little bit more before I say that that's where we're going. But anyway, I'll see you next week, and we'll figure it out. Thank you so much, and I pray that you have a good week.